If you haven't been living on a rock, then you know that the NBA trade deadline just passed. And with that comes a plethora of moves by the entire NBA. Whether it's trading that disgruntled guy for a team that doesn't want to be there, or trading for the player that could be your future, or where your team needs to get over the hump as contenders. And in this video, we get into all of that as I grade a lot of the NBA trade moves. And I mean a lot of them, so let's not waste any more time. But before we get started, hi, I'm FLB. I'm a big basketball fan and I make basketball videos here on YouTube, as you can see. So if any of those topics interest you, feel free to hit that sub button and the notification bell. It's the best way to help the channel grow. I upload 2 times a week and I'd love to have you back. Alright, but with that out of the way, let's get to these trades. So first up, we have the Miami Heat, who in my opinion were the biggest winners in this NBA trade deadline. But maybe I'm a little biased. But this deadline, the Miami Heat gave up Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley, Chris Silva, Mo Harkless to receive Nemanja Bjelica and Victor Oladipo. Yes, finally, after all the rumors and speculations of Oladipo wanting to be in Miami, the talks of how well he fits with the system and the culture, we finally pulled the trigger to get him, and at a very low cost at that. As Mo Harkless and Chris Silva has barely played for the Heat this year, Avery Bradley, who got injured early in the year, fell out of the rotation, and after a career year shooting the ball, Kelly Olynyk has really regressed heavily this season. So to put it lightly, the Heat gave up almost nothing as they got Nemanja Bjelica as Kelly Olynyk's replacement as the stretch big off the bench for this team, and an all-star level guard in Victor Oladipo to fill out Miami's big three as they try for another title run in the East. So this deadline, I give Miami an A+. Next, we have another big winner in the Denver Nuggets as they pulled the trigger and got Aaron Gordon, a guy that's a very solid scorer, extremely athletic, and a very sound defender, something that they desperately needed to compete in the West. Since to make it to the finals as the Nuggets hope, they need somebody that can stand a chance at guarding some of the best perimeter forwards in the game, which is something they lost as Jeremy Grant decided to move on from the team. And who do they give up for Aaron Gordon, you may ask? Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a future first-round pick. Now, while many people may say RJ has a great upside, a team like the Nuggets who's aiming for championships as their goal, a project player that needs multiple years to develop doesn't seem to fit that scheme at all. And Gary Harris, who is a guy whose value has been seemingly plummeted as injuries at the worst times possible, has given other players in Denver's roster the opportunity to flourish and take his role, like MPJ and Monte Morris. So it looked like the perfect time for Gary Harris to move on from the team. So overall, at the deadline, I give the Nuggets an A. Next, we have another winner in the Los Angeles Clippers, who traded Lou Williams and a couple second-round picks for Rajon Rondo. And boy, did they need this, as the Clippers have been hunting for a point guard that could get to the rim and create for others and alleviate some of the ball handling responsibilities of Kawhi and PG. And they found him in Rondo, while giving up Lou Williams, who's been pretty underwhelming this year, as his level of production has seemingly just fell off a cliff, and it can be filled by a guy like Luke Kennard, who will be seeing an increase in minutes with him gone. So in this deal, I give the Clippers a A-. Next, we have the winners in the Nikola Vucevic sweepstakes, the Chicago Bulls, as they pulled the trigger and got Daniel Tice, Troy Brown, Javonte Green, and Nikola Vucevic. And I won't go crazy in depth on this, since in my video yesterday, it was solely on this trade alone. So if you want to hear about that, I know you'll enjoy this video. But keep it short, the Bulls have made a great move, not only to just compete in the East to make the playoffs, but to retain Zach LaVine in free agency, as they've shown that they're willing to make moves to put the pieces around him to win. So overall, I give the Bulls a A- on the trade deadline. Next, we have the Portland Trailblazers, who in a deal that very few saw coming, traded Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood to the Raptors for Norman Powell, which in my opinion is a pretty good deal for both teams, as Toronto received a pretty young guy in Gary Trent, who even in a backcourt with CJ and Dame was still flourishing and showing potential, and Portland received a really good scorer off the bench, Nikola Powell, in a move that makes it seem like the Blazers smell blood in the water in the West, as a couple injuries and uncertainties in certain teams in the Western Conference makes them feel like this is the year they can capitalize and make it to the finals. So overall, I give them the B, as they didn't give up too much, but if they don't go too far in the playoffs, then this may look like a bad decision, since Gary Trent Jr. is only 22 and Nikola Powell is about to be 28. But so far, good deal for both teams. Next, we have the 76ers, who made some okay moves this deadline, as they received George Hill and Iggy, I'm not even gonna try, while giving up Tony Bradley and Vincent Pryor and a couple late 2020s draft picks. Overall, this is a pretty positive deal for the Sixers. George Hill is a knockdown shooter and another ball handler, which they desperately needed. But seeing as George Hill isn't the guy I would look to flip my predictions in the East, as since Philly still needs a shot creator other than Tobias Harris on the perimeter. But it's still a pretty good pickup, so I'll give them a B-. Next, we have the Orlando Magic, another team I talked about in this video, so if you want to hear more about it, you can go there. I know you'll probably enjoy it. But to keep it short, they gave up a lot for a not so adequate return, as they got even more guards and the young center that they're banking on being not a bust and only being misutilized in Chicago's system, which is probably right. But if they're not able to flip RJ and Gary Harris for draft compensation or even another young player to fit, this trade deadline will not be looked as a favorable one in the future. So I give Orlando a D+. And lastly, we have the Boston Celtics, who didn't do a horrible job, but with all the picks and assets they have, to walk away with only this haul is a little underwhelming, as they shopped Jeff Teague and Daniel Tice and Javonte Green and a couple second-round picks for Evan Fournier, Mo Wagner, and Luke Cornett. Like, still positive, but still extremely underwhelming with all the assets that Danny Ainge has been hoarding. C+. But that's all I got for y'all today. I know there's a couple more I didn't talk about, but I didn't feel like those were newsworthy, except for the Rockets, who get a complete F- for what they've done. But that's a whole other separate video, when this rebuilding phase that they're handling horribly starts to really blow up in their face. But follow my Twitch and my Twitter. It's in the description below. It's where you get the most updates, and I do quick conversation on there about any basketball thing that wouldn't typically be in a video. And I'm most active on Twitter, so you can go there. I do stream every now and then, maybe try to be a little more consistent, so if you want to just talk to me there, that's great too. But this has been FLB, that's my time, and I'm out.
Marshall amazing, nigga, how much you made today? I'll put a pin in, but stick on my dinner plate. Be for a feature like how much you finna pay. You don't have to be something, which like minute.